very powerful reality. Sustained success means you look backwards, you lean into it, you hire the assistant, the player, the connectivity between the ex-legend and hopefully the new legend. It's just the way it works. Not the way I do it, but get a quarterback, I could be wrong. So there's a story Dan Rosiano, during the reporter, is reporting that the Eagles firing Nick Sirianni on Monday, if they lose to the Buccaneers, is on the table. So we have talked about this. This is the place that nobody's discussing with Belichick because it's not open, but I think it's a real possibility. Strong ownership, excellent personnel guy. What they need is somebody to shore up their linebackers and secondary. That's literally Bill Belichick's forte. He wouldn't have to be the personnel guru.
Stop whining, boy.
He wouldn't talk much with the owner. He likes to do his own thing. They've got the quarterback. They've got the receivers, tight ends, the O-line. Cap is fine. That one works, but Philly would have to lose. I don't think they will. But I do think it points out something that's fairly obvious, and it took a while to figure out, or did it? Nick Sirianni, between his sort of juvenile sideline antics and theatrics, his anxiety at the podium, and the total erosion of the Eagles' offense, and he's an offensive guy, it appears that Nick Sirianni's a bit over his skis. It was Brandon Staley with the Chargers. The more money they spent on defense, the worse it got. Had to fire him. They're spending plenty of money on offense in Philadelphia. It's bad and getting worse. All the great coaches offensively in this league, McVay, Shanahan, Andy Reid, they lose coordinators all the time. It has very little effect on the quality of the offense. I mean, Kevin Stefanski's on his fourth quarterback. It's had no effect on the offense. Zach Taylor lost Joe Burrow halfway through the season. They finished above 500. Sirianni just lost a coordinator. He didn't lose A.J. Brown. He didn't lose Donovan Smith. He didn't lose his left tackle. He didn't lose Kelsey. He just lost a coordinator. McVay loses him annually. Shanahan loses him regularly. Andy Reid's lost several. He loses a coordinator, and it's man overboard. So we have multiple offensive coaches this year on their second, third, and fourth quarterback. Steichen, Kevin Stefanski. Look at Green Bay. Look at how much Jordan Love has improved October 15th to close to January 15th. He is like a new player.
Stop, boy.
I mean, you can say you knew all along, but LaFleur was barking at Jordan Love after games at the podium in October, and now all he talks about is how good his parents are, what a great kid he is. I mean, he's like transformed Jordan Love, and Jordan obviously deserves a lot of credit for that. But here's what I would ask you. Whenever I have a question about a coach, the first thing I ask is, are they getting their side of the ball right? Nick Sirianni loses a coordinator, all the talent in the world, can't. The second thing is, Brandon Staley's Chargers. What's your identity? I thought it was analytics, and then it stopped being analytics. What is Nick Sirianni's identity? Is he a great play designer? No. A great play caller? No. A massive culture builder like Dan Campbell in Detroit? Not really. So when he got hired, I talked to 2 or 3 people in the league, and they all said the same thing. I don't know if he's ready. He butchered the opening press conference, honestly. Looked absolutely terrified to be up there, and it was very turbulent for a year until Shane Steichen started calling plays. And my guess is Shane Steichen created a shield to protect his limitations, because that's what it looks like right now. Sometimes in life, it takes a while for the truth to come out. You have a protector, a shield, and you're really over your skis, and we just don't know it, and all of a sudden the shield leaves, moves on, and you are unseated, you unravel. And that's what it feels like. The Eagles' offense in the last 5 weeks, it's getting worse, is 30th in giveaways, 23rd in passing yards and offensive touchdowns per game. So again, Sirianni leaves. They have some inertia from that offense. Shane Steichen leaves, They've got some momentum from that offense. The longer he's gone, the worse it gets. It looks like to me it's a Brandon Staley thing. By the way, Brandon Staley was one of the finalists for the jobs in Philadelphia. That's why the Chargers, I was told, hire him. The Eagles wanted him. So they wanted a new young guy. Staley didn't work. Nick Sirianni loses Monday. I mean, if the story is out by a legitimate reporter, firing him is on the table if he loses. Well, that means if he loses, he's fired. Unless it's like a brilliant offensive performance, they lose in overtime, there's a bad officiating call. So this is the one to keep your eye on with Belichick. It's not being discussed because it's not open. But I always worry if you can't get your side of the ball right. And secondly, when you have a great coordinator or somebody leaves, and the longer that person's gone, the uglier it gets. Remember, over 50-60% of the guys hired don't make it. Right? They don't make it. And even the great ones, Andy Reid in Philly, Belichick in New England, eventually that doesn't work, and you move on. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1. Eric Mangini was with Bill for years and years and has the rings to prove it. I mean, when I watch Bill there, that looks like a guy that's not done coaching. That was my interpretation. What was yours?
It didn't really look like a love fest for 24 years together and 6 Super Bowls. And we all know in relationships very rarely is it mutually parting ways. And I'd say it might be mutually parting ways because Bill probably has something else lined up. I don't know if it would have been as friendly and together as it was if he didn't. But I imagine that Bill ultimately would have liked to have stayed in New England and finish it out there, but wasn't going to be able to, and probably isn't that upset because now he's free to go do something else, and I imagine he's got something lined up already.
Is there a fit with Bill that you think about and go, oh, that would look right, that would feel right?
Washington, to me, is interesting, and I know we talked about it before. I like the idea because that's the area that he's from. They desperately need to be revamped in so many different ways, and Bill would bring that. The difficulty I see is it looks to be a very hands-on owner. This is a guy who was, when he was in the business world, was extremely demanding, wanted answers right now, and I just don't know how that part of the relationship is going to work, and whether or not the owner will be willing to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to defer to Bill, and I'm bringing him in for his experience and all these things, or whether it's going to be one of those situations where it's a clash pretty early on because it's 2 such strong personalities.
All right, Gerard Mayo, well-liked linebacker coach, no head coaching experience. And then there's Mike Vrabel. I think Vrabel's a great candidate. My concern is he couldn't get the offense right ever, perfectly right in Tennessee, and it's an offensive league. Do you think Vrabel, I mean, they got to solve offense. They got personnel issues, culture issues with their offense, and Vrabel's more of a defensive guy. Is he a good fit to replace Bill?
Well, here's when I think about those 2 guys. If you go and make the move with Gerard Mayo, you're getting exactly the same thing. Gerard's never played anywhere else. He's never coached anywhere else. The only system he knows is the system that he's been in. So you're going to get a younger version, a different personality, but he can't draw on any outside experiences of other ways to do it. Where with Mike, the great thing about Mike, obviously the head coaching experience is fantastic. He had success as a head coach, but he's also coached at other places. He's coached at Ohio State. He's coached at Houston. He's seen other systems, but he's got the benefit of knowing how New England works. He understands that culture. He understands ownership. Mike seems like a home run if New England could ever do it. I don't know if you want to go follow Bill Belichick because of what the expectations are. And Gerard Mayo, I'm sure he's an excellent candidate, but it's the same thing that you had, and that could be, that's going to be challenging.
Pete Carroll, the age thing, people are healthier now. 73 now is 63 15, 20 years ago. Nutrition, balance, life, food, whatever. I don't worry a ton about age. But here would be my concern on Pete Carroll. Pete, you changed the systems. You changed coordinators. You changed quarterbacks. And you haven't done anything really well for 5 years. Like, their defense is a mess. Pete, it's your side of the ball. There's players everywhere. There's good players, Pro Bowl level players. So for me, my takeaway on Pete is it's the wrong side of the ball. I don't worry about the age. I just think if you're a defensive coach or an offensive coach, you got to get your side of the ball right. And if you don't for an extended period, I do wonder if the sport has to some degree passed you by. Is that fair?
Well, just like what you mentioned with your wife saying that in HR sometimes people aren't willing to change. Pete's willing to change.
Yes.
He's changed maybe too much, and then maybe that's been the fault of his is he's tried too many things. But I would imagine that Pete, from an energy perspective, from all that's going to be fine. I like the idea of Pete going back to college. I like the idea of him taking over some college program. I think he'd be unbelievable there. Just like with Jim potentially coming back to finish what he started in the NFL. I like the idea of Pete potentially doing that in college. You know, the other outside idea that nobody's talked about is what about Nick Saban? I would, if I had an organization that I was running, I would make a call to Nick. Nick had that experience with the Dolphins. If you're going to go the older coach route, he'd be a guy that'd be interested in talking to too and see what he thinks.
Jim Harbaugh, first of all, I think everybody that knows him was happy for the national championship. Michigan's a top 10 job in the country, pro or college. It's a wonderful place to live. What is your gut feeling on Harbaugh? Is there a fit that works for him?
I don't
always say that. Hit him foot down. You gotta hit him, just touch him.
And again, as we talk about,
you gotta just touch him,
man. Had experience both college and pro, and he's accomplished the ultimate that he can accomplish in bringing his alma mater a national championship. I think Jim would like to win a Super Bowl. So I would see at this moment him being able to move on from Michigan, go take an opportunity in the NFL, potentially win a Super Bowl. And from a fit perspective, Jim can make any place fit. And he's unique. He has his way of doing things that isn't necessarily the traditional way, but it works. And whether it's a system like the Chargers that's more family run, or whether it's one person on top like Atlanta, I don't see it being a problem either way. Jim can fit into any organization. They're just going to have to understand that he has a unique way of doing things, and it's both fun and successful. But that brings its challenges too.
Yeah. I would go offensive coach to New England because I think Sean McVay would have trouble in 2 years solving New England's lack of personnel. I just don't think they have any speed. They got a good, decent O-line personnel. Is there anybody out there? Could have Ben Johnson, who's never been a head coach, walk into that pressurized thing and work? Well, I mean, I just think their offense is 100. It feels like it's Jurassic. They just need a new set of eyes and ears.
But all these jobs, it's a question of who the quarterback is. It really is. And look at the situation in Denver, and there's a really good coach, an established coach, a coach that's been incredibly successful, and he's having problems without a quarterback. And Sean Payton, when he figures that out, is going to continue to be successful. It's the same thing in New England. If you can get a quarterback or anybody that can give you some level of consistent competitiveness, then you got a chance to win and win quickly. And that's why the Chargers job should be so intriguing to so many people, is because you think you've got to figure out at the most important spot. But whoever you put in New England, if you don't get the quarterback situation worked out to some degree, that's a lot better than what it was these past few years. It doesn't matter who walks in there.
Finally, I think Bill the coach was unraveled by Bill the GM. Would he see power? Do you think Bill can work alongside somebody and not on top? That he could say, guy goes, Bill, this is what we're going to draft. This is what we need. I'm part of this too. You're not going to usurp my power. Can Bill work with somebody like that?
No, probably not. Bill, I think, does a really good job with free agency and with on the pro side, and he's brought in a lot of guys over the years that have really helped in a significant way. the college side has been more of a struggle. Now, for him to get the opportunity that he wants, he may have to get into some type of relationship. But I would think to bring him in, it's got to be more of a partnership where the GM has power but is willing to defer. Because who is going to sit and tell Bill, this is the guy that you need to coach. This is the guy that should be on the 53-man roster. No, we're not bringing in the strays. And it's just hard to envision the personality that can do that and can do it effectively. That person's probably going to have to be a little bit of a salesman. Going to have power, but also need to be a little bit of a salesman for it to work.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.
So the drive stays alive after the fourth-down conversion. 1st and 10 inside the 30.
Well, the SEC's long run is over. Jim Harbaugh, Michigan national champs. Joe Klatt, voice of college football for Fox Sports. He's got the Joe Klatt Show, college football podcast, wherever you get your podcast. So we had said we thought Washington-Texas matched that well. Washington-Michigan was a different ball game. Yeah. The game kind of looked like a lot of people thought it would look.
I mean, it did in a lot of ways. I thought I give Washington a lot of credit for actually making it the game that it was in the middle part of the game, because it looked like Michigan was going to run them out of the building, to be honest with you, and literally and figuratively there early. Michigan does such a good job, and I know this is in the weeds, but when you talk about stopping the run, you've got to have what's called gap control, a player for every single gap in the offensive front. And what Michigan does better than anybody else in the country is if there is one guy outside of his gap, they exploit it. Bam. And that's what you saw in those big runs early in the game. And then ultimately, this is the stat that just jumps off the page to me. And this is why I think Jesse Minter is going to have an incredible future. Washington, with Michael Penix, Odunze, Polk, and McMillan, all healthy, all ready to go. 13 possessions, 13 points. Masterful job on the defensive side, and obviously that started with those defensive tackles and their ability to win the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, 10 wins first year, national championship final year. What's his legacy from when he took over to what he finished?
I don't see how he's anything short of a Schembechler-esque legacy. I mean, like I fail to see why his legacy wouldn't be up there with the greats in the history of Michigan
Johnson,
football.
Pete Carroll, Harbaugh.
Well, I'm just talking about Michigan, but at the college level, I've said this for a long time. Jim Harbaugh is one of the very rare coaches that have had success at both levels.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And now he's proven that he can be the best coach in college football. He's proven that he was within a snap of the Super Bowl. I mean, Jim Harbaugh right now is a top 3 to 4 football coach any level on the planet.
Yeah. And all these agendas and all these haters, it's been a bad year for the Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh critics.
Yeah.
You know, I said this before, but his family's very close. Yeah. The Chargers is the best job available. But Washington's interesting. The parents can move. Baltimore, Washington, see their grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to face his brother. He's uncomfortable with that. He can go to Washington. That division's got Jalen Hurts, Dak, Daniel Jones. He gets the number 2 pick. Washington has the most cap space. Chargers, I think we both agree with Herbert. It's a really good job.
Sure. Short term, that would be the obvious place to go.
Washington's not terrible.
I don't disagree with that. I think those are the 2 locations that he will look at the most. And of course, you know, he's got an extension on the table that will make him one of the highest, if not the highest paid college football coach in the sport. Now, what he's going to have to weigh is his does he want to deal with the ridiculous and inept NCAA, or does he want to go and try to prove that he can actually complete the mission at the next level and win the Super Bowl and be one of these guys like Pete Carroll and Jimmy Johnson that can win it at both levels? I think it's an interesting question.
I'm tripping.
He loves Michigan. He is Michigan in so many ways, and he loves.
I seen
It's such a
something else.
fascinating year
I can
because
just go
I've called.
fuck that nigga
Well,
up.
let me back up for a moment. I've called 16 of their games since 2021. Michigan games, 16 of them. And so I've been around him a lot, probably more than any other analyst
That shit
in the
slowed him
sport.
down.
And I can tell you that this transformation over the last 3 years, he is a much more jovial, happy, and communicative coach than he ever was before. He genuinely loves his players. He genuinely loves Michigan. And he genuinely did not understand what in the world was going on with this investigation. I met with him constantly, and he would be like, I don't get it. They've searched my phone. They've searched my laptop. What more do you want? I'm telling you the truth. Is the way that he went through this. And so I think his level of, or I should say his desire to stick around and deal with the bureaucracy of the NCAA is next to nothing. Let me put it to you this way. He got a notice, the program got a notice of allegation, what was it, 2 weeks ago, last week, about that stemming from the quote-unquote recruiting violations. A kid showed up at their building during the COVID dead period, and, they fed him, and then apparently there were some analysts that were on the field when apparently they shouldn't have been on the field during a practice, and then the NCAA is claiming that he was not forthright with information, and so on and so forth. And so they're trying notice of allegations. That's illegal. Meanwhile, there's still rules about inducements on the books with the NCAA. You cannot pay a player to come directly to your school. In this signing period, I saw players roll up to their signing day. They haven't signed. Not supposed to have a dollar. In Bentleys, in Lamborghinis, and Bentleys. And Jim's sitting here thinking to himself, you're giving us notice of allegations because a kid showed up during a COVID dead period? Like, in his mind, he doesn't understand this. And why would you deal with this? Why would you deal with potential 6, 7, 8 game suspension from an organization that you don't trust, nor do you don't respect?
Yeah, he's also, his strength as a coach is this relentless, repetitive building of structure. The NFL creates structure. It's a very structured league. College football makes $7 billion a year, and they don't have a president, a CEO, a schedule maker. So I think Pete Carroll struggled with this. At the end, he was like, I love the kids, and I love so much about the sport, but this inability to solve issues that are clearly solvable.
Like, put it out in front of him.
There's a free agent period. There's a cap. There's the draft. Yeah, like everything in the NFL is built on structure. Nothing in college football is built on structure, and I think Jim deserves better.
Well, I mean, you can put it that way. I think that he might desire a little bit better. And let's face it, he came back to the college level for one reason: to restore what he feels like is order or excellence at his favorite place, his alma mater, at Michigan. He's done that. There is nothing left to prove at Michigan. If he wants to stay there and deal with the NCAA and coach kids, then he's going to. And I guarantee you that he's going to love doing it. And if he wants to challenge himself at the next level, I believe that he'll have his pick of jobs, which, as you put it, and I would 100% agree, would be the Chargers or Washington.
Yeah. So Penix didn't play well, but he's a statuesque, beautiful thrower. A Goff, a Matt Ryan, a Tua, and when those guys are hurried and face pressure, they're not very good.
Yeah, I mean, Brady wasn't good in that situation.
Yeah, so I don't think less of him. That's what he is. Tua was his comp, and Tua under pressure is not great. I don't really get J.J. McCarthy as a high-level pro. Feels a little small and slight to me, build-wise. I think he benefits greatly from the coach, the O-line, the run game,
the structure.
Penix kind of has to carry Washington. McCarthy sort of manages Michigan.
Let's put it a different way. Everything that you said is correct. Michael Penix is asked by his coaching staff and his structure and philosophy of offense at Washington to make anywhere between 20
to 35 on the high end. Last night it was 35. NFL style throws. Okay, like drop back, make the read, post snap, and throw with timing, anticipation, and accuracy.
They ask a lot.
They ask a lot of him, and he's excelled. Now, that's hard to do, and you see the product of a defense that's going to confuse you and put pressure on you, and that's what happened a night ago. On the flip side, J.J. McCarthy, very talented player. Really like J.J. McCarthy. Athletic, good arm, excellent player. He's asked to make about 5. I was going to say NFL throws.
He went to the tight end.
And the throw to the tight end was excellent. By the way, it was still off of play action. Now, he's got great ability, but what they were asked to do with their respective programs was vastly different. One is, I think, very translatable to the National Football League. That would be Michael Penix. The other one is not so translatable. It's harder to say, well, I know exactly what J.J. McCarthy is as a prospect, because he's just not asked to do that.
It reminds me a little bit when Colt McCoy was at Texas.
Yeah.
And he obviously could move. Colt was a little small. But he wasn't asked to do, because that was during the Mac Brown. They had a lot of talent. They were winning those recruiting wars. And it was like, I like Colt, but I don't know how good he is based on, they're not asking him to do it. I love Matt Leinart. They weren't asking him to do a ton.
Yeah.
Penix is asked by a program that dominates 3-star recruits. Carry us to the promised land.
Well, and I think to some degree, this is playing out in front of our eyes this year with C.J. Stroud. The way that what he was asked to do at Ohio State is exactly what he's doing now with the Texans. It is completely translatable.
Yeah.
And it's working. Now, obviously, they've got a good defense and some good structure there, and he's got more talent around him than let's say, a Bryce Young. But I think that I'm higher on Penix than most. I would take him in the top 5 or 6 picks. I think that the injury history is going to be a concern. McCarthy is a harder evaluation for me because of what we're talking about. I don't know how translatable his game is. Now, he's very unselfish. He would be great in the locker room. I do think he has the ability. I just haven't seen it on a consistent basis, which is why I've made the assertion, if I was advising J.J. McCarthy, I would tell him to go back to school.
If Jim leaves, who gets the Michigan job?
You know, I think there's a coach on their staff that is 1-0 against Ohio State, and that's Sharon Moore. I honestly think it's as simple as that.
Because Harbaugh's going to take his DC.
I would imagine, so Jesse Minter is the defensive coordinator, and Jesse he's got NFL DNA.
Yes.
Remember, I told you the story last week about Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter.
Yeah.
And Jesse's going to want to go back to the NFL at some point. This would be seamless and easy entrance into the NFL as a coordinator if you were to just follow Jim, if Jim decides to go to the Chargers or Commanders. I do believe that Sharon Moore makes a lot of sense for Michigan because they built something very special, right? And he gets it, and he's a part of that. And so you can have a continuation of what you know is working at the top end. And in a lot of ways, it would feel a little bit like a Lincoln Riley or a Ryan Day at Oklahoma or Ohio State, and you're trying to continue excellence, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I actually think it's easier to continue excellence for someone that's been within the program than outside and trying to bring in something totally different.
Because everything Michigan's doing is right. So a new guy comes in and has his way of seeing it, and all you're doing is unraveling stuff that's working.
How in the world would someone from the outside walk in front of those players? Will Johnson still has to be there next year. Mason Graham still has to be there next year. Colston Loveland still has to be there. And if someone walks into the room and it's like, all right, we're going to change some things up, they're going to be like, beat it.
Yeah.
You know, so for those reasons, I think Sharon makes a lot of sense.
Okay, crazy town Buckeye fan probably sitting there today going, Mike Vrabel to the Buckeyes.
Stop hitting the goddamn
Right,
trade.
right?
Run. Stop it.
I mean, any reasonable person would.
Y'all got food in your bowl.
He couldn't beat Harbaugh
Stop
at the
it.
end. Yeah. Carroll was struggling with the Seahawks.
Guess what? You know, there's only been like 3 times in history that a Saban assistant has actually beaten Nick Saban. Maybe it's more than that, but the percentages are so low. He's struggling with Harbaugh right now. He's struggling with Michigan right now. Speaking of Ryan Day, you know how quickly it can turn around. And this is, by the way, an overarching point that I would love to make today. And this, I think, will be in the vein
vein of what you're asking, okay? Last night was the most hopeful and inspirational national championship game that college football has had in 15 years. And the reason is because